Welcome to the book club interview. My name is Scott Hollister, your host. Today's guest is Anson Young. He is the owner of Anson Property Group based in Denver, Colorado, which specializes in distressed property purchases. As a full-time real estate investor and agent for the past 10 years, he has completed over 100 wholesale deals and 75 flips. Anson Property Group is committed to changing communities, helping homeowners, and building long-term wealth. When not working, Anson can be found exploring the wilds of Colorado by hiking the Rocky Mountains with his family, reading favorite books to his son, and attending loud rock concerts. So welcome to the show, Anson. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Just glad to have you on. When it comes to real estate, I think you hit the nail on the head with this title. The book. What's more important than finding and funding real estate deals?
Nothing at all, man. If you don't have any deals, what do you really got? You don't really have much. So it's very important for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, so let's jump right into it. So you broke the book down into 11 chapters. Chapter 1 explains why you wrote the book and who you wrote the book for. So why did you decide to write a book?
So it was kind of a long process, and I know you have, we can talk about that a little bit later, but it started well before it got, I think it was like a 2-year process, which is pretty dang long.
Yeah.
In this world, guys like Brandon Turner can churn out a book in 100 days, and I took like 4 times that amount of time. So, but basically, I never set out to write a book. I got approached by Bigger Pockets, and we were kind of just talking about something else. I think we were talking about one of Brandon's books, and Josh or Brandon or somebody said, "Hey, when are you going to write a book on wholesaling or finding deals?" And I was like, I really don't have plans to do that. I kind of run a business and have a family and everything. And so they said, just think about it. And so I thought about it, and I knew I'd kick myself if I didn't take advantage of that opportunity, first of all. And then once I got into the process, I really did enjoy the entire process of fleshing it all out. And I actually learned a ton, and I'll even go and reference stuff that I've written in the book when it comes to, like, I was writing a Driving for Dollars manual for somebody who I hired. And you know what? I'd flipped to my own section of my book and kind of copied in some of those sections and gave him kind of a head start based on knowledge that I threw down in, two years ago. So that was kind of the process. And I think you asked about the audience, like, who's it for? And it's really for beginning, kind of mid-level real estate investors. There's stuff in there for, veterans. I've had some guys go like, "Hey, I picked up, a nugget or two," which is what we do too. What I do when I read a book, and I've been doing real estate for a while. So when I read it, I know a big chunk of it, but I don't, I go through everything. And if I pick up 1 or 2 little things, it's totally worth the time. So I wrote it for pretty much everybody on the spectrum, but it takes you from, zero knowledge to the closing table. So, those type of people who are interested in that, for sure.
Definitely. And you start the chapter, explain how you're a treasure hunter, a situation solver, and a master at spying potential. So which boils down to calling yourself a deal getter guy. So I love that. But a little bit more fancy, like you said, what was it? The acquisitions guy, I think.
Yeah, nobody says, like, in 3rd grade, like, I want to be an acquisitions specialist or something. So, kind of boiling it down to, I go out and find deals. My dad's a great deal finder when it comes to cars. I must have picked up on that, and he's been doing that for a long time, but he looks at the stuff that I do, and he's, it's an economy of scale. So he's blown away by it, even though he picks up, VWs and Porsches and stuff and fixes those up. I just have a 0 maybe on the end of that and or 2 and call it good. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, no, my dad was in the auto body as well, and I think I learned that creative eye to, take a damaged wreck and see it to the end product. So
yeah,
I align with you on that. Yep. So let's talk about the 3 hats you're wearing. So a hat as a wholesaler, a fix and flipper, and a real estate agent. Do you enjoy one more than the other?
I do. I mainly use my license for the flipping business. I do occasionally do some stuff here and there for friends and family and people that I can just quickly step in and help them out. So that's, I'm not aspiring to be a number one retail agent. It's just I don't have time for that. So I think out of the other two, I definitely enjoy the fix and flip process the most. I like the creativity. I like taking a crappy property and making it nice. And then having a family move in and they're proud of, the house that they have, and, changing neighborhoods, have neighbors come up and thank me for buying, that house and turning it around because they've been looking at it for 20 years and they hate it because it's in such bad condition. And so to know that you're kind of making that impact directly is huge. And so I'd say that fix and flip hat is probably my favorite for sure.
Great. So, before we jump into the fix and flip and the wholesaling and the more details about finding and funding deals, you jump right into chapter 2 about market analysis. And you explain that's one of the best places to start and how to find Waldo. So how do we become confident in a certain target area? And why is that important that we become an expert in that area as well?
Yeah, so I know it's a pretty broad question. I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do as a real estate investor. If you're kind of a fix and flip guy, you're definitely going to want to find out what section of your market, of your city, is most conducive to fix and flip. So what are houses selling for as is, and then what are flippers selling them for, and then like what's the difference? Can you make money inside of there? And if you're wholesaling, it's a pretty similar process. But that might be like I'm doing market analysis plus talking to a bunch of real estate investors to see what they want to buy and where, and then compile that. Say, 10 people want to buy houses in Aurora, Colorado, which is a suburb of Denver here. Then I know if I go into Aurora and I can find houses, I at least have like 10 somewhat interested people, that kind of thing. And then if you're a buy and hold person, it changes a little bit because you're not caring as much as the ARV, which is the after repair value. You're more concerned about maybe job growth or stability or rental growth, vacancy rates in that city. And so you're going to be looking at different terms, different conditions based on what your investment strategy is. And then if you're like a developer or something, that's a totally different thing as well. And so it just depends on what your niche is, of how you're going to analyze it. But it talks about it pretty good in the book. I try to break it down without making it a whole book on its own, because it definitely could be of, how to identify, is this a good market to be in for what I want to do? And sometimes it's not. I mean, sometimes you might come into a hot market, say San Francisco or Denver, Boston or something, and you might realize, man, based on these prices of purchase price and my marketing budget, I probably have a month or two of marketing here. And then when it comes to purchasing, a $500 to $1 million property, for a new person, that's going to be like, I don't know how to do that. Or
Yep.
It freaks them out, And so, so that just that much market analysis might drive them to a secondary or tertiary market in their state where their money goes a lot further and where it might be more conducive to their strategy. So that piece is important. And then becoming a master of market knowledge, I found that pretty quick, because when I lived in Arizona for 2 years, and that's when I very, very first started investing, I got to know Phoenix pretty good. And then 2 years later, I moved back to Denver, and I felt like I was starting all over. I had to learn areas, neighborhoods, what people are putting into their properties, all that stuff. So it's like starting over. But since then, we've gone back into the Phoenix market from Denver, like a virtual thing. And, we're wholesaling and flipping houses straight off of, straight from Denver. So you're doing it virtually. And I learned, okay, if you can analyze a market quickly and if you can do it thoroughly, you can actually drop into any market across the nation. And as long as you know what you're doing, you can quickly analyze those numbers, figure out where to be, and kind of get up and running way faster than if you just let your agent handle marketing or market knowledge, or if you let your partner handle market knowledge. If you know how to analyze all that, you can just drop me in wherever, somewhere in Kansas, and I can probably flip some houses in within a month or two, just knowing how to analyze all those numbers and how to manipulate that for my strategy. So it's huge.
Definitely. No, I love that business system. You said you could, drop me in anywhere if you have those sound principles that you talk about.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I mean, it's great because you can start over anywhere, and
yeah,
this is a very local business. So like a real estate agent who moves has to get a whole new book of business and everything else. A real estate investor who knows their market or knows how to analyze a market can literally move anywhere and get running up and running pretty quick.
that's great. Yeah, you said something interesting where you said if you had 10 buyers looking in an area, you would then go and wholesale. Is that a technique you use today where you're working with investors and then you try to find them deals?
I don't do it. I don't do a ton of wholesaling these days just because the
Mm.
market's pretty dang tight here.
Yeah.
Um, but that is, I guess it's classically referred to as reverse wholesaling. So it's kind of, it's like I think in the book I have like a diner analogy. So instead of making like um, a shepherd's pie or something, and then going around to each table and saying, "Hey, you want this? You want this? You want this?" And that's not how it works in that world. Somebody places their order. They say, "I want fish and chips," or "I want a hamburger," or whatever, and then they go find it. From the kitchen, they make it and they take it out there. So for wholesaling, it would be the same thing. If I talk to 20 investors and 15 of them are investing in a certain zip code, those guys I want to talk to and say, "Hey, what's the last couple of projects that you bought there?" "Oh, I bought a 3 bedroom, 2 bath for $100,000." And I talk to each one of those guys, and then I know in that zip code, if I find a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, for around $100,000, we're talking. I'm pretty dang close to a deal because I know what these guys bought their houses for. And so it's like that reverse order. Like I'm taking orders, and then I'm going to go find the inventory to sell to them, as opposed to saying like I'm just going to market everywhere. I hope that somebody wants this house, and it's kind of like the shepherd's pie. It's like, do you like this? Do you like this? And
Yeah.
of course, not everybody's looking for that at all the time. So by doing it in the reverse, you have a much better chance of taking it to those 15 guys, and they're like 3-2 in that area, perfect. And then you can work out numbers from there. But
That's amazing. Yeah.
yeah.
Moving on to chapter 3, you talk about, reaching the market and the many kinds of sellers and many types of properties for sale out there. You touch on auctions, on market, off market, distressed properties, foreclosures, short sales, REOs. So what's your favorite way to buy real estate, and where have you had the most success?
So this is an interesting topic because the ways that I got deals 5 years ago is totally different than the ways I get them today. And I think it's the same for a lot of investors, and it's just the way that the market shifts. So each year brings its own set of challenges, whether it's, we started off buying a bunch of REOs, a bunch of bank foreclosures, basically. And you can throw a dart at a map and hit a deal. And there was a huge glut of inventory here in Denver, and a huge chunk of those were REOs, and so you could easily go in and swoop in and buy a handful a week and be just fine. And then the market started correcting and going back up, and so the foreclosure started going away, but then we still had a lot. We had a lot of short sales on the market, and so those we shifted from REO to short sale. And then now the market has corrected so much where almost nobody's underwater. I mean, just for fun, I looked for short sales on my MLS system here. And there was like 3. And I don't even know how those 3 are still underwater of any kind. But there used to be, 10 or 50 times that many, back in maybe 2013, that kind of time frame. So it just goes to show, like, if you're just narrow-minded and you're not moving with the market, you can get left behind pretty quick. So then we moved to off-market, to direct-to-seller type stuff. And so these days, it's direct-to-seller, networking, and referrals are my 3 big deal-finding avenues that kind of keep the pipeline going. And then who knows what next year will bring, or the next year,
Yeah.
as the market shifts, as marketing methods shift, and stuff like that. So some of that stuff's out of your hand. You just got to pay attention to what's working and what's not, and shift.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I love how you have that repertoire of skills and you can move with the market and not, stay stuck in one. Um, and
Sure.
in chapter 4, you're talking about networking, and you just mentioned it. So, what advice would you give a first-time real estate or investor who's looking to network and possibly find some deals?
So I would basically the way that I started off at the very beginning was networking, and it was going to every REI event that I could go to. The monthly REI clubs, the Rich Dad Poor Dad cash flow games. Um, Basically, just tried to get in front of and talk to as many people as possible. And I was pretty shameless. I was just like, I'm new. I have no clue what I'm doing, and I'll do anything for you if you'll teach me some stuff. And so I had two or three people kind of say yes to that. They're like, sure, go punch, signs in the yard, in the middle of summer in Phoenix in exchange. I'll show you the MLS system, or I'll show you how to comp a property, or I'll show you kind of some of the stuff that my clients are doing. And, I'm very thankful for those opportunities. But that networking piece of just getting out there, meeting as many people as possible, because you never know who you're going to partner with, or because my first deal back in Denver was just like that. I was networking with another agent in my office. We were just out for coffee, and I was like, hey, I have a deal, but I actually don't have any money, or I don't have a way to get bank financing. And he's like, well, I've been looking to get into this, and I have money, but I don't have any deals. And so it's like, and so we met, in the middle, and we made good money on that deal. And so it was all from networking. So I'd say go to as many things as possible, and then say that there's not any events in your area. I would recommend just starting one. Like, even though you're not the expert, it's not about like you being the guy, you being the expert. Just start like a networking happy hour group where you can maybe attract 10, 20 real estate investors, and then like the magic happens right there in that room. And that comes from the experience of starting a networking group in 2012. And this week was our monthly meetup, and there was 70, 80 people there, and it just keeps going every month. And pretty soon, you'll meet the right people who will have the right tools. So if you need a contractor, there's 10 people there who use contractors, or financing, or insurance, or just deals. They're all right there. So if there's not one in your area, start one. And if there's a bunch in your area, there still might be an opportunity to start one and kind of have a smaller thing going, and something that's pure networking, that's no sales, and that attracts people right away. So
Yeah. No, that's some amazing advice, and I wish that if you go back time and you heard that right away and you just applied it. You didn't think about it, you just went. And if you didn't, try to gravitate towards those investors and give them a place to come to you. So
exactly.
Yep. Now, chapter 5, you talk about marketing methods and how you can take two approaches to marketing. So targeted direct and broad direct marketing. Can you explain the both of them to the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was something that kind of my publishing editor helped me like narrow down of how to describe this, basically, because I probably had other terms for it, but she kind of helped with this. So the broad direct marketing is like a billboard. So it's something that you just throw up, and a bunch of people are going to drive by it. So it could be a bandit sign, billboard, some internet marketing methods where it just is like a big blanket that goes over everybody, and you're just hoping to catch the right person at the right time, who might be driving down that highway and see your billboard, and your message speaks to them and they call you. Or driving out of the Walmart parking lot, they see your bandit sign and they call you. So that kind of broad, you're not targeting anybody, you're targeting like everybody who would be going by your marketing piece. And the targeted is obviously the opposite of that. It says, I have a list of 1,000 names and addresses, and I'm targeting those people specifically. It's Bob, Jerry, Sue, and they're at 123 Main Street, 124 Elk Street, so I'm targeting them specifically based on a bunch of different criteria. Mm-hmm. And that way I'm not kind of like spending a bunch of money to grab 99.9% of people who don't care about my billboard or my bandit sign. now I'm like focusing on these 1,000 people who, who I know from this criteria need to hear my message and I can help them out. And so that's kind of the difference. You're like, it's like a shotgun versus a rifle. So shotgun is like just blah, like everywhere. The rifle, you're just, there's one hole in the paper when you shoot the target. And that's kind of the difference. So
yeah. So do they both have, success, obviously. Can you put a certain percentage? Do you, love focus on, direct, or is, having broad, or is it kind of a mixture of the two?
So it's funny when you write a book like this, because it's you try to like encompass all the different marketing methods. I'm not a huge fan of broad direct marketing, so I've never put up bandit signs and I've never had a billboard. I do have some internet stuff, but it is still targeted. I classify it in the targeted because I'm targeting those people specifically instead of just like a broad search term or something like that. And so I find when you're just getting in front of people direct and you're targeting the people that you need to target, say like people who are in foreclosure, and you have a list of 50 names. That's a targeted list that then you can just target those 50 people as opposed to like the 5,000 people in that neighborhood. You want the 50 people, and because you know that you have something that you can help them. And so that's definitely where I lean. And I know guys who put up bandit signs and they do a bunch of deals too. So that's also the problem, is that there's a million ways to make money. And so I'll never say like, oh, that never works, because then I'll meet somebody who's like, that's all I do, and then I feel like an idiot. So
no, it's good. It's like you said, just having those extra skill sets in your belt just in case.
Exactly.
So let's run right into evaluating the deal, chapter 6. So this is what I struggle with, and I'm sure a bunch of people struggle with, in the beginning, is, the auction setting where you get, bid and the emotions get involved. So how do you stick to your purchase formula and buying criteria so that you don't end up losing money by taking unnecessary risks?
Yeah, that comes from either experience or discipline. So on the experience side, you might have wavered from your purchase formula on a deal and then got burned. And so then your experience locks you into like, no, I'm not deviating anymore. And then obviously the discipline side says, I didn't deviate in the first place and I'm conservative on my numbers. Therefore, yeah, I am going to pass over some deals because they, I actually learned a really good lesson from Jay Scott, who wrote the book on the big
flipping houses. Yeah,
the book Flipping Houses, and then the book on negotiating real estate. That Jay Scott, and he for a minute I was trying to sell him a property in Atlanta, which is his backyard. And I think that the deal, he evaluated it and he said, I think that this is like it was something like $500 or maybe $1,000 outside of his purchase formula. And he said no. And he literally just said it's no deal, man. And I was like, wait. And at the time I was maybe not as disciplined as I am now, but I was like, hey, it's only $500 or $1,000. And he said something that I'll always stick with is like, well, if I bend on a 500 today, and it works out, right? And then the next one comes along and I'll bend 1,000. And the next one comes along and I'm like, it's only $2,500. And then the next one comes along and you're like I can make up that 5,000 somewhere else. And then so you kind of just keep bloating out your formula until you're gonna get burned. And so I learned a great lesson from him doing that, and I've pretty much tried to stick to my numbers 100%. And so that was a great lesson of just that discipline of like $500, like no. I mean, it's either in or it's outside the box. I'm not going to move the box to fit this deal. And so we ended up not being able to do that deal because I couldn't get the price down. And it was just one of those things where it was a great lesson to learn. Nobody lost any money or anything, but it was something that he imparted on me, which was like, stick to your guns and just stick to your guns. Like there's nothing else you can do.
No, that's to learn that lesson, instead of being burned. That's amazing. I mean, because usually it's, other books talk about, like the slight edge, or it's just small steps, every day. And if you go in the wrong direction or if you go in the positive direction. So
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm just going to remember that story from you telling me. So thanks. All right, so this is a good question. Chapter 7, so financing the deal. So let's say you have, I think you use an example, $250K liquid in the book. Now, would you use all that money for one purchase, and why or why not?
I would not, honestly. I'm somebody who's never had their own money in a deal, and so I have 100% leverage when it comes to that. So I can do, I can do as many deals as I can raise money for, or I can go to banks for. Whereas, say you're just like a guy who has a cash principal who just says, I only want to have cash in there. I don't want to leverage anything. You could do one deal at a time, whereas I could do, potentially hundreds if I have, the capital backing to lend me the money. And so, and let's say that you're just doing bank financing, and you have to put down 25%, and you break up that 250 into five $50,000 down payments. Yeah, you're like chunking your money, but you're putting it into 5 different projects, and that's leveraging your 250 into 5 deals. And if you have to do it that way, that's still better than just doing one deal. Yeah, you're saving money on interest, interest and closing costs and all that stuff. But you might be losing out on opportunity as well, where 5 deals should pay out way more than just one. And my 100 deals in that example will pay out 100 times more than that one. So yeah, I always recommend leveraging if possible, and whatever works for that investor's risk tolerance and their business plan. And so it just makes more sense. You can leverage that in more deals.
Yeah, no, that's a great story on leverage. I love it. Because at first you think of all those high points and fees and interest, and you're like, what? Why would I waste so much money? But like you said, the opportunity lost from not having that capital available is going to cost you in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, I was sitting down with a business coach, and we have a mutual friend who does development, and this guy had I think like 70 projects going with all hard money. And at the moment I was kind of like, man, development with hard money, that's a different game. That's very expensive, But Matt had broke it down, and he basically just said, listen, that's all factored into the end cost. If you make just a slightly smaller margin, but then you can do, again, like 10 times the number of projects, it makes sense. And so it's the same way if somebody has bank financing, they're like, okay, I go to my credit union and I get 5% on my renovation loan. They look at somebody like me who takes a 12% loan, and they're like, oh my God, that's, over twice the amount that I pay for interest. And I go, yeah, but I'm only in and out of the project in 90 to 120 days, and it's like you do the math and you go, like, I would rather 100% leverage that than have, 25% down and go through the whole qualification process with the bank. I'd rather go to a private lender and just, say, hey, lend me money. And so it's just a difference on their risk tolerance. So.
Definitely. Yeah, and I can echo that same thought when, at first there's, you try to get the Fannie and Freddie debt, low interest bank loans, and then all of a sudden, trying to jump from that to private capital is tough. So you turn to the hard money because, it's a little bit more of a business, and, you can kind of get, in my experience, a quicker loan than I was building a track record. And I just factored in the 12% in the points, and that was that, and as long as you're still making it, it works.
Exactly.
So what's your best creative financing story, since we're on the topic?
Oh man, this is going to be a huge disappointment. Because I honestly, there's one thing. So since I'm licensed here in Colorado, there's certain types of creative financing that I can't do, or that I've been told that I can't do. So like subject to and kind of like sandwich lease option wraps, just like really creative stuff. But I'm also a little bit locked in by my license of what I can and can't do. I never want it to look like that I'm taking advantage of somebody or um, anything like that. And of course, the real estate board doesn't want to see that either. And so all of my deals have honestly been either partnerships or private money financing. And
Mm.
so, yeah, when it comes to like the crazy creative stuff, like some of my friends do, um, I feel like I'm just boring because I've just done the same thing for a long time. And if the right situation comes across and it's something that I can do, I'm not opposed to it. It's
Yeah.
just like, a lot of times I would just rather close and be done. Some wholesalers bring me deals where it's like, well, if you catch up the first and then you take over the first and then you pay off the lien and you do this, I just go like, can I just close it and we can just be done? Like I don't have to deal with any of that stuff. Um, but there's a lot of validity and a lot of success with the creative, but I'm honestly haven't jumped in
Yeah.
there yet. So,
Well,
all
keep it
right.
simple. No, no, it's good. I love it. Since we're on the topic, negotiation, chapter 8. So, the fear of rejection. And you say you go out in the world and get 10 no's as fast as possible. So, how will this help with our ultimate goals?
So I think most people just have this aversion to the like conflict, minor conflict, or obviously serious conflict. But if you go to Best Buy and you're looking at a TV, you know, 9 out of 10 people aren't going to be like, "Hey, do can you cut me a break for like $50 or something?" And sometimes they have the power to do that, and sometimes they don't. You never know till you ask. But if you're afraid to even ask the question because you're going to get told no, or you're going to feel like you're going to be embarrassed, or obviously in the real estate world, this is um, out of 20 calls, I might go on, one or two appointments. And so I'm hearing a lot of no's, like, no, I'm not interested, or no, I don't like your numbers, or no, that time frame doesn't work for me, or you get rejected a lot. And so once you're over that fear of just that conflict or I think it's all in your head, that perception of like, oh, this person's going to think differently of me, or I'm going to be so embarrassed when I give out my price and they like laugh in my face or something. If you kind of just stick to your guns, stick to your price, and you can get to know as quickly as possible, then that next 10 appointments are going to be so much easier because you go, oh, it wasn't the end of the world when they told me no, or they laughed in my face, or or they, like it wasn't nearly as embarrassing as I thought. And then you learn other coping mechanisms to get around, or maybe around that no, or you learn on your skills how to build, like, oh, no, that doesn't work for you. Well, maybe there's something else that we can work out that does. And then you kind of work, you learn to work, within that no. And
Yeah.
so it's hugely important. Just get that rejection out of the way. So then you can just go to your next 10 appointments a little bit more fearless. So you're not worried about looking embarrassed or looking dumb by somebody not liking your price or not
Yeah.
liking the way you dress or whatever it is. Just get there, and then you rock it past it faster.
Smart. Well said. So, chapter 9, let's say we get one yes and we're go to lock it up. So, let's explore the elements of a legally binding and valid contract. So, we have the offer, the acceptance, the consideration, the obligation, competency and capacity, and written instrument. So, in terms of, offers, is that something that you have kind of streamlined over the years when you're working with fix and flip or wholesaling?
I'd say yes. There is um, of course there's that piece of the offer is kind of touching back on negotiation. That's the like who's naming their price first, and who's coming out of the gate, and like the first one who throws down a number um, is the boldest, and they usually lose, honestly, just because they now everything is anchored to that price. So if I throw out, hey, I'm thinking about 150,000, but in their mind they were like 250 or 200 or 225 or 175, or if let's just say they were like, I was happy with 100, So I'll take an
Yeah.
extra 50 grand, like sweet.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
first person to kind of drop that anchor, now the entire negotiation is going to circle that anchor, um, and it's not going to go, too far outside of there. And um, so that offer piece is something um, that a lot of times you have kind of a verbal back and forth where you're like, so what's kind of your ballpark that you're looking to get? And they might say, well, 100, I'd like 150. And if that works, and then I think that offer in this context of this chapter would be like getting it down on paper,
Hmm.
getting it down to where if you have like a verbal ballpark where you're like, okay, you're thinking 150, I'm thinking like 130, maybe we can meet in the middle at 140. And they're like, well, okay, that sounds good. And then you can kind of like write down your offer. So then you're kind of anchoring it there. And if it moves, it's not going to move up to like 175, or you're probably not going to talk it down to like 75,000. So that piece is important of kind of mutually getting what you agree to down on paper. And sometimes it is a shot in the dark where they're like, just, no matter what I do, I can't get them to tell me a number. They're like, just shoot me a contract. And then it's like, well, here we go. And that's also this offer piece where I can, shoot them over contracts, explain, what I have in there, and just say, hey, this is my price, and I'm shooting in the dark. So here we go. So that's kind of that offer piece.
Oh, it's great. So, once you come to an agreement and both parties agree, so what are some good tips to keep a deal together and bring it to close?
Um, Definitely communication, I think, is number
Mm.
one, especially with off-market sellers. These are people who most likely, I think the average American moves every 8 years or something like that, or keeps their house for only 8 years. And um, on the long end of that would be a lot of the sellers that I work with who have lived in their house for 20, 30, 40, even 50 years. So they've bought and sold a house like once or twice in
Mm.
their life. And then on the short end of the spectrum is somebody like me. I might buy, 5 houses a month. That's a huge difference to go from 5 a month to like two in their life. And so to them, this is a crazy, life changing, just huge process to get their brain around. And they're looking to you as the expert. If you're doing five a month, you should be the expert, and you should be able to communicate each step of the contract as it goes
Mm.
along. And so that communication piece of holding it together, I find like um, with a lot of investors that I know, their stuff blows up because somebody wasn't talking to somebody else, or somebody wasn't picking up the phone, or somebody went to Mexico for 2 weeks and didn't return phone calls, and the seller just drops them because they feel like they have no confidence in this investor
Mm.
because of communication there. And so that's kind of the biggest piece. So that could be like setting up. Um, hey, we're under contract now, and as we discussed before, I'm going to send my sewer guy in there to make sure that the sewer line's not all busted. And if it is for some reason, we might be able to come to an agreement, because that's different than what we talked about. So that's kind of a forward communication piece. And then when it comes to, let's say my guy goes out there and it is busted, I'm not calling him out of the blue and just being like, hey, I need $10,000 off the price because the sewer's busted. I can then refer to that earlier communication where I said, "Hey, remember how I said that if the sewer is messed up? Well, unfortunately, it is. Here's the video. Here's the report. Here's what my licensed guy says." And so that communication, like, it's important. It continues the
Mm.
rapport that you built to get the deal, and it continues all the way to closing. I'd love to have every single one of my sellers be just as happy with the process from beginning to end, and still recommend me to people that they know who might be in a similar situation, and be so happy that it was taken care of from A to Z, and that we communicated the entire way through. And that's kind of what holds that glue together, is continuing that rapport through communication.
I love how you're thinking of the sellers in mind and trying to, have them as comfortable as you are, and, to have both parties, walk away with something positive. I think that's huge.
I think you have to. I
Yeah.
think that in a competitive market, you're setting yourself apart by having um, this word that just doesn't exist in real estate, which is, well, in real estate investing, which is customer service. It's like these people aren't just like a commodity. This is like something that they lived in for 30 years. It's a huge deal. And the more that you can hold their hand and communicate and, have this compassion of like, hey, we're helping, we want this to be a win-win. They can exit the whole process and give you, glowing reviews or video testimony, or even if there is no payoff at the end, at least that, they said thank you at the closing table. And that's, that's part of the deal of setting yourself apart from your competition. Yeah. It's actually caring about these people. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. Now, chapter 11. So how to build a business around finding deals. In terms of our goals, can you explain how you start with the big picture and how you reverse engineer to the present?
Yeah, for sure. So this is something that I like kind of really, really wanted to keep in the book. And it was in danger of being axed at one point because it was like, hey, this is like finding and funding deals. Who cares what they do after? You got them to the closing table. And part of me was like, well, I'm not doing them a good service unless I can expand. Like, okay, you got that first deal. Now what? Like, can you go make that to 2 to 3 to 10 to 20, whatever that is? And so this kind of reverse engineering concept's not new, but it's basically saying like, okay, so Scott wants to make $100,000 a year wholesaling, right? And so it's kind of a long, formula, but we'll try to simplify it here. But so Scott has a goal. He wants to do $100,000 in wholesaling. He needs to figure out how many deals at the average prices he can have to sell in order to hit that $100,000. So let's say each average wholesale deal is $5,000 in your market. So you say, okay, I need 20 deals to hit my $100,000. That's 20 deals at $5,000 a piece to hit $100,000. That's pretty simple, right? And then you back up and you say, okay, how do I get 20 deals? Like how much mail? Like this does really refer to direct mail because it is a little bit more mathematical. Doing kind of referrals and networking and some online stuff that you don't have the numbers for might be a little bit harder to do, but we'll just keep it in the context of direct mail for right now. So you say, okay, I need to hit 20 deals. How am I going to get those 20 deals? And then you have to break it down. Okay, how many letters am I going to have to send to actually get these 20 deals? And so you can break that into, when you send a letter, you have what's called a response rate. So you might send 100 letters and you'll get, so at a 10% response rate, you get 10 calls, right? Out of those 10 calls, it'd be very rare if every one of those was just a deal that you picked up. Then you just send 200 letters and you're done with for the year, which would be freaking awesome.
Yeah.
So you say, okay, out of 10 calls that I get, maybe I get one appointment. And so, out of that one appointment, let's say it takes you every 4 appointments, out of every 4 appointments, you close on one house. And so, from there, okay, so it took me 100 letters to get one appointment. So if I mail out 400 letters, I should get those 4 appointments and I should get one deal based on the numbers here. And of course, this will change for every investor based on your response rate, how good you are at converting, etc. So, so in this very simple world, you would say 400 letters to get one deal, right? Now we have to pull out a calculator, but I think it's going to be 400, and we'll just do it times 20 because you did 400 letters to get one deal. You want 20 deals. So you're going to have to send out 8,000 letters over the course of a year to get your 20 deals to make your $100,000. And so it's a pretty good way of, and you can scale that. You're like, I want to make $1 million. Well, what'll that look like? And if you know kind of your response rate, your conversion rate, you should be able to back into, okay, what action am I going to have to take to hit my goal? And so you start with the goal and then you back it out to how much action you have to take. And 8,000 letters is, you'd have to send 666 letters a month to hit your goal. And if all those numbers are correct. So that's really a good way to kind of figure out how much action you're going to have to take based on what you want your goal to be.
Yeah. I love how you can quantify it, because success is so much simpler at that point. It's, at the end of the month, you can ask yourself, hey, did you send out those 600 and some odd letters? And it's
Right.
yes or no.
Yeah, exactly. And that seems very like cold and sterile and mathematical, like insert 400 letters, get, $5,000. It's not always that smooth, because you might go 1 month, 2 months with 0 deals, and then, 2 months that you pick up like, 8 or something. So way above average. And so it's just, it's generally pretty precise, but it's still a numbers game. I mean, you could hit 0 deals at the end of the year, even if you did all the right efforts. It's just, it's unlikely, but it's possible.
Yeah, no, definitely. Now, talking about scaling up, so what are some of your favorite, business systems that you use, like a CRM or a deal repair analysis?
Yeah, so I use, for CRM, I'm using Podio. I've tried to build a couple custom things inside Podio. I think everybody does this at some point when they pick up Podio. It's just like this big sandbox, and then they have to kind of like beat it into submission to do it what they want it to do. And so, and I'm actually picking up like a new like app suite for Podio from one of my friends, who's probably going to be marketing it here pretty soon. I'm just going to test it out, and his seems a lot more streamlined and simple than mine. And so, so Podio for CRM, that works pretty well. And then for deal analysis, I still use the Bigger Pockets calculators. I think that they're good. I helped develop the wholesaling one, so I hope it's good. So I use that, and then there's a houseflippingspreadsheet.com has a pretty good spreadsheet system that I still use for because they have a kind of a report section, so I can plug in my deal, plug in all my numbers for rehab, and then in reports it'll have something that I can actually send to my private money lenders, so they can see all the numbers on one page of what I'm looking to do. And if I send them that plus comps and plus tax records, they're usually like that's enough. They're like, I got all the numbers right here. This is sweet. So so I really like that part of it.
Yeah.
And so that's been pretty huge. And I'm playing around with some kind of automation on IFTTT app, which is if this then that. And so it tries to automate some little things that you would be doing, like it can automatically like search Craigslist for certain things and then throw it into a spreadsheet or throw it into a Word doc. So then you don't have to go search Craigslist yourself. You can look just at your daily Word doc for whatever you're looking for. Just little things like that to try to. I'm not great at systems. I'll just admit that. I have Traction and I have some EOS kind of stuff sitting around here that I need to implement. Yeah. But it's definitely one of those things that I recognize I can be way, way better at. But those are my favorite tools that I have that I use regularly. That's for sure.
Yeah. Let's talk about a little bit more of a general question. So how is the process of writing a book, raising a family, and running a full-time real estate business?
Oh man, there were days it was definitely it was pretty hairy. I was trying to hit a goal of like writing 1,000 words a day during the week, and I think I was also blogging for Bigger Pockets main site, and obviously, like you said, running a business, having a family. Since it took like 2 years, this was like summertime would come and my son's out of school. Business generally suffers during that time because we're off playing and trying to make memories there. But I'd say that if I had to do it again, I would do it a lot more structured and I would do it a lot differently. I didn't realize how daunting of a task it is, because you can index like the whole book. You can kind of do like an outline of it, and then over the course of a year, you could be writing something, and then you didn't realize that you hit on the same topic like 7 months ago, because it's been so you're like so close to the project. Like you have, I think it ended up at 90,000 words, but I think I wrote probably 110,000 for the whole thing. So, 20,000 words get cut. And, and so you're so close to the project, and I'd get sent like edits, and you're like, well, I have to read the entire book to get through these edits. And so, or you have to like A/B it on different screens. And it just, it was a lot tougher than I thought it was going to be,
Mm.
but it was very much worth it at the end when I get, people who message me out of the blue and they're like, hey man,
Yeah.
I got this and this and this from what you said, and I'm out, taking action on it. And that's all I ever wanted was like read it and go take freaking action. Like
Yeah.
don't read it 10 times and never do anything, but read it, get what you need from it, and then go out and do it because that's huge. So it was definitely worth it. It was hard, but very worth it.
That's good. That's great to hear. So last little bonus question before we wrap things up. So the introduction, I think page 1, you talked about a flip that you went 9 dumpsters on. Is that true?
No, that's true. Everything in there is true, which I try not to embellish too much, but
Yeah.
yeah, that was a hoarder house where um, the power was out, and I remember like going through it. First time I went through it, I could only make it there like at 7 o'clock in the fall, I think it was. And so I get there and I have like my cell phone flashlight because I didn't have my flashlight in my car. And I'm like, I get into the house and and I knew it was bad, but I get into the house and I like climb on this big pile of junk, and I'm bending over so far that like my back's like touching the ceiling, and I'm kind of hunched there, and just thinking to it was my first experience with this type of house, and just thinking to myself like, how in the world am I going to do this? Like, I don't know if there's any structural issues because there's just so much stuff here.
Hmm.
Um, and then when it came time to basically we had left the seller a few dumpsters to say, because she was like, hey, I want to try and clean out what I can, and I want to try to go through stuff. And unfortunately, this isn't the first time that it's happened, but when it came to like closing, and then we get there and nothing's been done, which is fine. We agreed to take the house as is, and we get there and she's had kind of a partial nervous breakdown, just due to the hoarding situation, and she ended up signing over the entire contents of the house to us. And so it was one of those things that was like, oh well, now this is all of our stuff. We've and since then we've had hoarding people who have gone through and they've got all their valuables and got everything that's important, and then just left us all the trash,
Mm.
which is fine. That's the nature of the business. But in this case, I mean, there was like gun safes, there was guns, there was silver, there's money, there's cash, and there was all kinds of just stuff in there that was worth money. And so for her, it was worth it to get healthy and move on rather than even try to dig through her own stuff for her own valuables. So very interesting.
Yeah. No, that's a lot of dumpsters. 9.
It was, it was, yeah. Um,
Uh,
and like the longer you're in the business, the more you'll see,
yeah.
stuff like that. So
Yep. Yep. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Anson. I really enjoyed you being on the show today. Like I said, great book. I think it's very well written. I love the actionable advice that's in the book, and you can, you really get a good feeling to, how, to be a successful, fix and flipper, wholesaler, agent, and how you can utilize, multiple things on your tool belt to find success. So if you could just tell the listeners where they can find out more about you and how they can purchase the book.
sure. Yeah, I've been pointing a lot of people these days to my Bigger Pockets profile. It has some of my social links on there, and you can connect with me there. They have a good messaging platform and stuff, but that's biggerpockets.com/users/Anson, and you'll land right on my member page. And then where to find the book? So you could find it if you're already under Bigger Pockets. You can find it right there. It's just biggerpockets.com/great deals. Amazon has it. BarnesandNoble.com has it, and you should be able to find a physical copy in your local Barnes and Noble. They usually carry one or two copies, and so you should be able to find it there. But then there's a bunch of online ways to find it if you can't find it locally. So
Great. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
thanks, Scott. I appreciate it, man.
And that wraps up our book club interview with author Anson Young, who wrote the book Finding and Funding Great Deals, the hands-on guide to acquiring real estate in any market. On the back of the book, the second paragraph summarizes it perfectly. It says, "This is not a magic pill that will turn you into a successful real estate investor overnight. Instead, this is a practical guide to use in each step of your real estate deal finding journey. Hard work required, but not included with the purchase of this book." I love that, and I think it summarizes this book perfectly. And make sure you grab your copy today. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook at the Book Club Interview. My name is Scott Hollister, your host, and we'll see you next time.